Welcome to Building Fortunes Radio. Make sure you check us out at buildingfortunesradio.com. Along with our marketing partners, we're here to help our PM Marketing Network Lead customers build their businesses and make the world a better place. At Building Fortunes, we know how much your business means to you and the people important to you. So spread the word, tell a friend, join our newsletter, and go make a difference in your world. Now on to our show with your host, Peter Mingils.
Hello, everyone. Peter Mingils here. You're listening to Building Fortunes Radio live on buildingfortunesradio.com. So for those people unfamiliar with my voice, my name is Peter Mingils. On Saturday evening, I get a chance to share this microphone and this platform with a great gentleman. His name is Scott Johnson. Scott and I met many years ago. It's going to be, 3 years ago, when I did a radio show talking about some things that were happening with a company called VEMA. And the FTC had just shut them down temporarily. And I did a conference call with an MLM critic. His name is Roger Van Vlissingen. Roger's a real smart guy. I like to interview really smart people because they're really smart people, and I enjoy working with really smart people. So when I had that conversation with Roger, Scott called me up and he says, there's people missing something, and it's this thing called the tool scam. So we did a whole segment on the tool scam, on how people. There's nothing wrong, in my humble opinion, with making money and selling tools. But when you don't disclose that most of your money is on the selling of the tools, and you let your listening audience think that they have the same opportunity as you do, that's just wrong. So I was kind of already pre-digested, educated on what was going on with the tool scam. So Scott and I did a couple of radio shows on that, and then I realized that Scott Johnson really knows a lot about this industry. So we started to expand it more. And I've had a lot of fun educating our Building Fortunes Radio listening audience with Scott Johnson. I just want to give him a couple of plugs on his website. He has two websites, stoptheamwaytoolscam.wordpress.com. So it's stoptheamwaytoolscam.wordpress.com. And that's where he's documented a lot of things about, guess who, Amway and the tool scam. But then he also built up allmlmfacts.org, so allmlmfacts, F-A-C-T-S.org, and that's where he documents a whole bunch of other stuff. So when we went through some of our material, we talked about the tool scam, then the industry gives us plenty of material to talk about as well. And recently, we've been on this thing of the cult-like tendencies of MLM, and we've been speaking about what's been going on with Nexium and Keith Raniere and Allison Mack, and we've had Frank Parlato here, and we've had a gentleman previously on our radio show last week, Ben Simkus. And I've always noticed and noted that there is cult-like tendencies associated with MLM, and it's very devastating, sometimes really devastating, if you don't recognize that. So Scott Johnson invited a great guest, and I'm going to playfully say, because I'm a groupie of Scott Johnson's, he just said, listen, we have Tanster on, and show up. So I'm doing what all those other groupies do. I'm just showing up, even though it's our own radio show, to hear from Tanster. And I'm not as educated as Scott is about Tanster, so I'm going to enjoy. I'm going to enjoy having this wonderful conversation with her as well. So I just playfully say that just like when we talk about cults and people coming in, then we are just here to have a little bit of fun. So we're gonna get started. I'm gonna let Scott Johnson do the introduction. Right. But for those people that are listening in, you'll be able to hear this again on buildingfortunesradio.com. So Scott Johnson, over to you.
Peter, thanks again. I appreciate being here, and we do have a fun time. And how can you turn down a call with someone that goes by the Tanster? And I believe if I have your website correct, it's thetanster.com, right?
Got it.
Yeah, so it's Tanster, thetanster.com. Oh,
wow.
And I believe the reason or the way I came across you was I believe I saw a tweet by you about Ben Simkus, who wrote a story about being at a party back in 2007 with Nexium, and so I followed up with Ben, and I thought, this Tanster person looks really interesting too. So we talked, and we've had a couple conversations. So what I'd like to do, Tanster, is just kind of introduce you by way of questions. And one of the things I want to kind of start out with, I think, and I'll let you start any way you want, but if you can get around to just talking about your overall philosophy in life, and just talk a little bit about, if I'm recalling your term correctly, it's the hero's journey, and I'll just let you take off with it. Go right ahead.
Okay, so since 9/11, I noticed things are getting a lot darker and darker culturally, and I didn't like it. And I was overweight and not healthy and not happy, and I just basically made a pact with God that I would do whatever God wanted, because whoever that is, no preconceptions or doctrines on it, like, okay, there's a God, so I'm going to go ahead and do whatever that gut instinct for God thing, that we have in us. I'm just going to listen to that from now on. That gets me killed in a week, I'm dead in a week, okay? Fine, whatever, I'll do it, So the next thing, I started putting rainbow art all over the streets, which upset people or delighted people, or some people couldn't even see the rainbows. So that created a really big splash. And then the police came to my house, which did scare me. And, I got in trouble for putting free rainbow art out on the streets. Anyway, so, that wasn't a big deal because, who cares? And so I kept doing this as a live hero's journey, because that's how the hero's journey begins. There's a call to adventure. So my call to adventure is, will you put rainbow art on the streets? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I did it. So I answered the call to adventure, and then I started to have, like, a battle between good and evil over, whether I could put art out in the streets. So as some people were comparing this to Footloose.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And we also talked.
Give me some context.
When we were talking earlier too, you also drew a parallel to Star Wars.
Right, but in that one specific part, it was Footloose, because they were saying we couldn't put our art out, But
right.
The hero's journey part is that you could really follow the hero's journey through Star Wars. So in the beginning, Luke is on his planet, and he's bored, and he's unhappy, and then Obi-Wan comes in and says, oh, well, this is adventure. Will you go on the adventure? He's like, nah, no thanks. And then his, family gets killed, and he has to go on the adventure. So it's like that. He could just have stayed on his own planet and not gone on the adventure. But I chose to go on the adventure 100% and then to document it through, every social media platform. So I've been creating media showing my hero's journey since September 2014.
Okay, and kind of in parallel with that, we also talked about your very deep interest, and this goes, I think, further back than even your realization after 9/11, which is with Napoleon, which, he had his own hero's journey. So if you could just talk a little bit about how you got interested in Napoleon and, how that developed and how that sort of, interacted with your life. Go right ahead.
Well, when I was writing novels when I was in 18, 19, 20 years old, and I was super, 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 super ambitious. And no matter what I tried, there was no way anybody would ever read my book and give it a shot. That kind of broke my heart. Because I was like, my books are good. People would like them. But I saw that, all the channels of distribution were just closed to me. If I were born to some other family, I would have been very successful, I thought. But since I'm a nobody, I can't ever write a book that anybody ever reads. So I was furious about this. And I was thinking, oh, well, maybe if I write better, maybe if I, become good enough. So I was at the library trying to become good enough. And this book was right over my shoulder. I was like at the library. And I just pulled it out. And the back of this book about Napoleon said, not a day goes by without my loving you. Not a night without holding you in my arms. Here's the call to glory and ambition which wrenched from the soul of my life. Napoleon. So I'm like, oh, well, I didn't know Napoleon was a genius and passionate and, his feelings. Like, I was never told any of these things about Napoleon. See my point?
It almost dropped on your head then, right?
Right. It was like this thing he wrote. I was like, that's not the Napoleon they told me about. See what I'm saying? Like, right, this is the biggest romantic of all time.
You studied his life, and I think you even, if I recall correctly, you've written plays about him.
I have written plays about Napoleon. So I'm around 25. It's the 90s, and I just know that if Napoleon wrote that, then everything they ever told me about this guy is completely, totally a lie. So that to me was, like you said, the brick on the head. Like, oh my goodness, they've been lying to me about everything. So I just was like, oh, like Napoleon. Like, the answer is Napoleon, Whatever Napoleon is, they don't want us to know about it. You see my point?
Yeah, and there's no doubt that he was one of the most influential humans that ever lived. There's just no doubt about that.
Right. And yet, right? You know what I mean? And yet they somehow make him look horrible. And the thing is, since I'm like so deep into Napoleon, like you would have to do 15 shows about Napoleon with me because I only want to talk about Napoleon. But the point is, anyway, he was just, they were calling him the Antichrist while he was still alive. And one of my major sources for, like, I feel the truth about Napoleon is the memoirs of his stepdaughter, Hortense. And in the end of her own memoir, she's saying they did everything to set him up to call him the Antichrist. He was quite the opposite. See what I'm saying? So they were already doing information war against Napoleon while he was alive.
Yeah, I think you can say
you see the size of that.
Yeah, you can say that about a lot of famous people. There was a group of people that just almost worshiped that particular person, and there was another group of people that just hated their guts, and that's just the that's just the way it is. Especially when you become famous, there's these two factions that normally form up, and it was probably more so with him because he was bigger than almost anybody else on the planet. When he was around. So that to me that's very what I would call normal. That there's a group of people that hated him and thought he was the Antichrist, and another group of people that thought he was the greatest thing, since sliced bread. So that totally makes sense to me. A lot of it was the same breakdown.
Like the regular people loved Napoleon, and then like the sliver at the top hated his guts.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's the same as today. You know what I mean?
That's a lot of similarities between that and Trump.
Only the sliver at the top hates real heroes.
Yeah, that's a fact. Well, that's great. I just wanted the listeners to have a little bit of idea where you're coming from, and I just find it fascinating, your sort of personal philosophy and how you came to where you are in life. And one of the things we've also talked about was that your dad either was or still is in Amway. Is that accurate?
Oh, I'm not really close to him, but in the 90s he did get into Amway, and I saw he was buying all the Amway stuff, and he was really pushy about it, and I'm sure it didn't work for him.
Yeah, if he's not in it, it didn't work out. He lost money and decided I'm tired of losing money. That's why I quit.
Without a doubt.
The reason I quit was I found out my upline was making a lot more money from what Peter was talking about earlier, the tools being all the various meetings, small, medium, and large meetings, the books, the the recordings, audio, video, the voicemail, the website access. These guys know how to make money, and that's where they make most of their money. It doesn't come from Amway. It comes from the tools, and therefore it's a tool scam because most people don't even know that. Most people have no idea that when they show off their mansions and their jets and their yachts and et cetera, it's from the tools. It's not from Amway. It's a big bait and switch, if you will.
Right.
And so that's what your dad experienced, and he, to this day, may not even understand that his upline made more money from the meetings he was going to than they did from the Amway products that he was buying. So
I know. It's really a Ponzi scheme.
And he tried to get you involved, and you resisted. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And why did you resist? I'm just curious, why you pushed back and said, I'm not interested.
My father's not someone I look up to. That's so sad to say, but he wasn't generally a bringer of wonderful things,
Okay, so it was more the pre-existing relationship than it was that it was Amway.
Yeah, he was like forcing it on me. I'm sure I would have disliked anything he was forcing on me.
Okay, so it was just that he was so pushy to his own daughter, it just kind of.
Oh yeah, that bothered me a lot. Yeah, it bothered me a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah, I was like, oh wow, okay, I see what comes first.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, okay. Really, I wasn't sure if there was any income in your life,
And I have to say that I can't say most. I can say my personal experience was, if someone's not interested, don't be pushy on them. But, when it comes to, someone like a relative, sometimes people either aren't taught the same way I was taught, or they just forget what they were taught, and they go ahead and they're pushy because they really believe this really is a good thing, because I did for a long time. I thought it was a legitimate business and it was a good thing. It turned out not to be, but that's often what happens, I think, particularly with relatives and close friends. If they're just an acquaintance and you show it to them, they're not interested, typically they go away. They don't keep being pushy. It's the fact that they want someone that they know well to be involved with them, because at that time they think it's a good thing, even though it's not. But they don't realize that at the time. So you have to be kind of fair from that standpoint. So then also, and I think it's been more recently, you got involved in a cult for a few months, and I'm sure you didn't realize it was a cult going into it. But go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
Well, I was very serious that I was going to do anything my instinct told me to do, and that was it, no matter what. And one day the message I got was to go to this healer, because I had some sinus problems, and I went to go see the healer. I had this incredible experience with him where I just felt like I recognized him. Oh my goodness, who is that? I know who is. I know that that's something important to me. It's so it was past information happened, which really blew me away. But I was like, hey, what's going on? So there's magic around him and hypnosis around him is what I'm trying to say.
It just clicked. Yeah. Right.
See what I'm saying? I had this incredible magical illusion experience type thing.
Right.
So then when I walked away from this healer, I was like, wow, that's my destiny. See what I mean? Because I was probably love spelled or something.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying? So I'm leaving there. This is my side of it. I'm like, wow, he's amazing. Wow, who's he? That's the reaction I'm having to that. But now 2 years later, I'm like, oh, they probably did some magic on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so he kind of helped you, and then you just got deeper and deeper into it, right?
Yeah, and there's this whole thing, that various people who've left this guy's cult say, basically they talk about getting possessed by demons. Okay? So he's there telling you, oh, you want money? Oh, okay, I can get you that. You want love? Oh, sure, I can get that too. You want to look younger? Oh, I do that too. What else do you want? would you like a jet ski? I do jet skis too. See what I'm saying? He's telling everybody what they want to hear.
Yep, that sounds exactly like Amway. You can have whatever you want as long as you work hard enough and long enough. All it takes, almost anything that you can imagine, it takes just time and money, and that's what Amway promises you as well.
Right, same thing. It's the same
really
pitch.
Anything.
It's anything you want. Anything you want, you can get it here. So I felt with my, my gut instinct to go along with this whole guy's program. And all these supernatural things did happen because he has actual power. There's something he's doing that is real. And so I went through the whole experience of what this guy does. And he's trying to basically seduce people into hell because just, vibrations, this is the sense I get. And if you're low enough, if your vibration's low enough, like you can really go very low and get stuck down there. We have to be very up here with love. It's hard to describe. But the point is, he can somehow entrap a person's soul. And a lot of people have described this. So for something so supernatural to happen in the middle of my hero's journey, I was like, oh, okay, just follow my story. You'll see the supernatural is completely real. Does
and
that
then
make sense?
what caused you to decide this is not the right thing for me, that this really is not what I thought it was?
Well, a year later, I felt I should be on this cruise with him. Okay, so after this whole year of all these supernatural things happening to me, an odyssey unto itself, finally I was with him on a cruise for a week. After all this love magic, love spell craziness.
Now,
and then when I saw him in person, I realized he's a complete, total fraud and liar.
Tanster, were you spending money with him during that year of this seduction, let's call it?
Yeah, very much a seduction, around $4,000.
Okay. And then on this cruise, was it supposed to be you and him, or you and him and lots of other people?
Oh, me and his cult,
Okay.
So
that you would have
There
to
was a group of, what was a group of 10 or 20, or how many?
Well, they would do free programs, and there would be like 200 people there. And if it was just his people, maybe 20 people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then on that cruise is when you kind of decided this really isn't genuine or whatever.
Absolutely. On that cruise, I was like, oh, this guy's a total fraud.
Was there a single event?
Was
there a single event that identified it? Whatever you said, oh my gosh, this happened? Or was it a general feeling that you just spent a little bit more time with him personally?
Well, I covered all of this live, and it's very interesting because the story that I was telling this whole year was he was communicating with me telepathically, and he was telling me all these things that were actually lies. So for a whole year, I'm saying this is what he said to me telepathically, and then I got near him in person, and I still was obviously to me telepathic with him. I could talk to him without talking. But it turns out that this whole time he's been having this huge affair with his secretary. See, does that make sense?
A little bit, but so clarify what you mean by he used to talk to you telepathically. So you weren't seeing him personally, like you weren't going to a meeting. You were dealing with stuff like not using any.
Stuff.
So no phone, no internet. His wavelength somehow communicating with you.
Totally. The more we did it, or I did it, or whatever, the easier it got. And then it's just like a muscle. You work a muscle, then you get great at it. So then you're just totally telepathic.
Because he did have courses or something like that as well, right? I mean, it wasn't 100% telepathic. There was things you were paying for, that $4,000.
You would pay for his, he called them meta healings. And it turns out that a lot of what he's doing in his quote-unquote meta-healings is he's just hypnotizing people, and he's programming them to spend more money. Allegedly.
Right, allegedly, yes.
Allegedly.
Because after you had this realization, you went online and started to tell other people about him, and then either him or the company sued you. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. He and his secretary, they both sued me.
And is that still an open lawsuit, or did you settle?
Okay. They threatened me with lies. I formed a counterclaim, sent that, never heard from them again.
Okay, so the lawsuit is still open, but it's not being pursued?
Mhm.
There's no settlement, there's no decision. It's just an open, non-active lawsuit at this point.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's nothing like a settlement like I have with Amway, okay, and things like I'm not allowed to associate Amway with, and this is in my settlement, which is public, so I'm not breaking any agreement with Amway, but I'm not allowed to associate with them with any death, accident, or what's the third thing? Death, accident, or illness. That's the third thing. So I can basically associate Amway with any intentional, non-lethal, non-illness related thing. Whether it's robbery, rape, beating somebody within an inch of their death. Any of those things is fine. I just can't do those three things. And so obviously I have a lot of latitude.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so happy with my settlement. But you don't have anything like that. You're just
no, it's like a game of chicken.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't want to. They don't want to. It sounds like they don't want to play Discovery.
Of course not. No, but I said all along. I said, you guys want to? I don't think this belongs in court. But if you guys would like to take this to court, by all means.
Right. Okay. All right. So, I mean, that's kind of how you, continued your hero's journey again. Was you had this experience, then they sued you, and you said, "Hey, I'll sue you back," and that's just part of your journey. That's still ongoing. I mean, you're in the middle of that whole thing.
It's all happening live, and it's in the middle of happening.
And let me switch back to NXIVM real quick. Peter, unless you have something real quick, if you wanted to ask.
Nope, we're okay.
Because I wanted to tie this into NXIVM. I believe this has been like a month or so, and I don't remember sometimes exactly, how things occur because I'm all over the internet. I'm all over Twitter and different websites. So for me to remember exactly the sequence of events on how things got started, but I believe I saw a tweet from you talking about Ben Shemkus, who wrote a story about NXIVM back in 2007. He was a party with a bunch of characters there, and I won't go into that in detail on this radio show because people can just go to what I consider is the best NXIVM source of information, and it's very simply called frankreport.com, and the guy behind it, his name is Frank Parlato, and we had him on the show about a month ago. So, people want to listen to that show as well as Ben's show. They can go to, Peter's radio. In fact, the easiest way I found to get to it, rather than trying to memorize the website name, is just do a Google on Scott Johnson. That's an easy name to spell. And then in addition to Scott Johnson, put in Peter Mingils, which is Mingils, and our whole series of radio shows should pop up to the top of your list. But anyway, just to get back to what we were talking about, so we contacted Ben, and I thought, gee, this Tanster person that started this tweet to inform me about Ben sounds very interesting too. That's when I called you, and we had a talk a little while back, and I wanted you to tell the audience about your story, and this is all I've talked to Peter about so far. So you have the whole story in front of you about crossing your neighbor's lawn, and I just want you to, again, tell that story because I think it's really important. I'm going to tell the importance of it after you tell it. So go right ahead, Tanster.
You're cutting out a little bit on me. Would you like me to talk about Ben?
Yeah, talk about Ben and then talk about, the whole thing about crossing the lawn.
Oh, the lawn, of course.
Yes.
Okay, number one, about Ben, I found him in the comments of a Truthers YouTube channel. So since they tried to sue me, the cult, I started to get harassed by Facebook, and my whole revelation system against the cult was all on Facebook, and they started to act like they were going to censor me. So I left Facebook, and I just dove into the YouTube truth community. There was like a crazy mosh pit going on there, and I started to see that there was a need for a blog to cover the truth community, because so much was going on, and, I saw a vacuum there. So I decided to make my blog about the YouTube truth community. So one day I was looking in the comments, and I get all this information. Like, there's all this truth in the comments of these videos. And in the comments, I found Ben. And he was saying, I saw Stormy Daniels and Eric Scheiderman and Huma Abedin and Anthony Weiner and, obviously Allison Mack and Keith Rainier. And, I want to tell my story. And, I could see no interest in what Ben was doing. I gave him my email. I said, please contact me, because my art project is the hero's journey, but it's for truth. This is really an art project about truth, not backing off that. This is a dress rehearsal. Seriously, the truth has to come out,
Right.
It's not negotiable.
And that's what this radio show is all about, is getting the truth out. And now we're mainly focused on MLM scams, getting the truth out about, the tool scams that we just talked about, and also the almost total lack of retail sales in, I would say, at least many, if not most, MLMs. And that's really what, Peter and I are focused on. And so this is off topic, but it's intentionally off topic. I wanted to illustrate the power of truth through a story that's kind of in parallel with it. So go right ahead. Just keep going. I just wanted to kind of, let our audience know what we're talking about here. We're really talking about truth. So go right ahead.
We are. So for me, as somebody running an art project for truth, and here is somebody who is putting himself in harm's way to say that there are a lot of high-level Democrats that were clearly a part of this sex cult that's being accused of human trafficking. And the story comes out, and it's, this one woman's not happy, that's too bad, and he's leaving all this other stuff out. Okay? So there's some kind of story that they're supposed to run on this cult thing. And there's no place for Ben's memory of 2007 in this world, where that story's already written. They already know how that story goes. So for me...
And by the way, Ben's story is on FrankReport.com, because I talked to Frank, and he agreed to put his story on there because FrankReport.com is all about exposing NXIVM. And so, Frank agreed to put his story on FrankReport.com based on a conversation I had with him. So continue on.
Well, thank you so much for doing that. You have helped a lot.
Yeah, and then Ben just this past week got a little bit more exposure. There's another website, I can't remember the name of it, political something.
BigLeaguePolitics.com.
Yeah, so he's there too, so he's gaining more and more exposure to what he witnessed in 2007. So thank to you. You know, you're the one that kind of raised him from obscurity on that Truther blog or whatever it was you were looking at, and then it bubbled up to me, and I bubbled it up to Frank, and now it's just going and going and going.
Ben was such an incredible find for me, because just the fact that he is speaking the truth and he's not backing down. So, I try to do that as well, but to have someone else do that, the way I see that, there are all these masks that are bound to come off, because we are going to see who likes that and who does not like that. You see what I'm saying? So Ben is an exposer of truth. If someone just personally hates Ben's guts, that's probably not a good person. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
So if that person acts like they're a good person otherwise, well, that's probably a lie. So that's why Ben's story is important to me, because it's important because it means something, but it's also important to me artistically as some sort of weapon of revealing truth.
Yeah, and interestingly, on frankreport.com, one of the people that really dislikes Ben, and he goes by the moniker of former Nexian, that's sort of his name on that website. I am very sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm quite confident his name is Omar Rosales. Now, Omar Rosales is an attorney who was also in Nexium briefly, and he also has written books about the occult and things like that in the past. But interestingly, he was also recently suspended from being a lawyer for 3 years, and he was fined, I think it was $175,000. He has another lawsuit facing him from the law organization within Texas. He's actually based in Austin, and he got into trouble with the legal profession, which he is a part of, or he was a part of, up until his 3-year suspension, because he would go around to businesses in Austin, Texas, and try to point out all of the ADA, the Americans Disability Act violations that different businesses had. If they didn't have a railing that was exactly, X number of inches off the ground, then he would say, I'm going to sue you unless you pay me X number, I don't know what the number was, $2,000 or $3,000. If you don't pay me that money, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to cost you tens of thousands in a lawsuit trying to defend yourself. And he did this hundreds of times throughout Austin, and maybe even outside of Austin. And that's how he got into trouble. But he also wrote the first Nexium book that's out there. It's, it's available. It's being sold. And so he's trying to make a buck on the book that he wrote, and because he can't practice law for 3 years, so he's got to do something to pay the bills, I guess. But he's very anti-Ben. I mean, he is just breathing fire over this guy. And yet, Omar Rosales, I've seen the video. He did an interview where he essentially backs up a lot of the things that Ben said. All these politicians in New York State being involved in Nexium because Nexium was looking for political influence. So it boggles my mind how Omar is so anti-Ben.
It's hilarious.
So, I mean, it's just amazing. So finish up whatever you want to also say about Ben, but then I want to get into your crossing the neighbor's lawn story. Go right ahead.
Well, the situation with Ben is in a really good place. So one day a year ago, I had to take my car to the mechanic's garage, and for some reason I felt I should walk home. It was about 8 miles from there. And, after getting yelled at for walking in summer in the Hamptons. I saw my house on the other side of a totally empty horse farm. And I figured it wouldn't be so horrible if I just crossed this horse farm. We always used to be able to walk around. So right when I'm in the middle of this giant horse farm, this totally angry rich guy comes out. And he starts, like, chewing me out. And he's saying, I do have fences. And I said, yeah, I'm sorry. I just, I live over there. And, it would be like 5 more miles to walk around. It really would be dangerous. And I said to him, can I go home? Can I go home?
I'm already halfway there, right?
Well, I'm right there. I'm his neighbor. I'm his neighbor.
This is directly next door or down a few places.
I think my house borders their caretaker. I'm pretty sure their caretakers are my neighbors. So I'm like, yeah, I'm next to his house. I'm next to his house or his caretaker.
Right.
Right. I'm next to his house, yeah.
So you were almost home.
Yes, I had yes. My house is right in front of me.
Right. I mean, you had walked 7.5 of the 8 miles at least.
And it would have been truly 5 more miles to not cross through the horse farm.
Right. I understand.
No
okay,
way.
go ahead.
I still have 5 more miles to not cross this guy's horse farm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I just wanted to bring that out.
That just wasn't going to happen. I was going to have to find a way to get home.
Right.
Even if I pissed off a rich guy,
Right.
I was going to have to risk it. Anyway, so I said, can I please go? And he thinks about it. And he says, okay, but don't do it again, And I'm walking away, and I'm like, that was Matt Lauer. So I put it on my Facebook, which is where I was, doing my Hero's Journey blog. And as soon as someone saw it on my Facebook, my neighbor came up to me and she asked me if they weren't letting me cross because Matt Lauer's people promised that we could still cross because that's the only way we can go to that road.
Right.
So my neighbor complained and said, that's not what they said. So then I started to complain about Matt Lauer and how, none of us can ever walk to that street again, ever. Because Matt Lauer has a summer house that he comes to, sometimes. And the attitude was stop complaining about him. He's rich. He might kill you, And I was like, you know what? Just because of that reaction, I need to talk about this. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's a privileged person, and people said you need to treat a privileged person differently than a regular person.
It was more about that. And people were like, could you stop talking about Matt Lauer? It's making us all very uncomfortable. And I'm like, no, it's you. It's your reaction. It's because you act like this I'm doing this.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Right, because it's you. I'm talking about you guys. And I would say it. I'd say, Matt Lauer acts like that because we let him. Get that through your heads. Why do we let him? That's his weekend house. You know what I mean? He doesn't even live there. And none of us in our whole community, we could never go to that street again. And Matt Lauer said he wouldn't do that, but of course he did, because he's Matt Lauer. Because who would ever question Matt Lauer about anything?
So this got all blown up on Facebook with you saying, why is he so special? And people pushing back on you going, well, because he is special, because he's rich, and rich people are automatically special, and you need to treat him differently than a regular person. That was the gist of the conversations, right?
100%.
And then what happened?
Well, he got fired, right?
Yeah, and what do you think led to that? I don't think we have any absolute proof, but
No, we don't.
Because you broke the veil.
No connection can be formally made at this time.
Because you broke the veil on Matt Lauer's, perfectness, and his kingly state in this world.
Exactly.
Maybe people start scratching their heads a little bit like, you know what, this woman is probably doing the right thing by standing up to him a little bit. All she wanted to do was cross his horse pasture after walking 7.5 miles, and she was a neighbor, and he just trashed her for crossing her pasture, and so maybe
across his 10-acre horse farm.
So maybe some other people start thinking, you know what? Not only is Matt Lauer not a real special guy, but he's actually a lowlife, and that's when all of these stories started coming out. Right? Am I right?
Yes. No, sometimes the truth is very funny.
Yes, it is. And now Matt Lauer doesn't have a job because, I believe this. I believe that you caused other people to think, you know what? This woman's right. He's not some godlike figure.
No.
And we need to be able to comfortably tell the truth without being afraid of somebody suing us or, intimidating us in any way. We need to be able to
Exactly.
speak the
so
truth.
We have all these wonderful rights, but we're intimidated out of using them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter, this is why I asked the Tanster to tell this story, was because of, and let me take this all the way back to Star Wars and Napoleon. I'm going to wrap this whole thing together with one little bow. I'm going to wrap together the Matt Lauer story and Star Wars and Napoleon, and here's my take. Here's my take on this whole thing is if more people were like Tanster, and quite frankly like me and you, Peter, and spoke up about what's happening and spoke up about the truth, then the world would change for the better. And both Star Wars and Napoleon, the main characters were the heroes, there's no doubt. But both of those groups had to have an army. They couldn't do it by themselves. Napoleon could not have accomplished anything close to what he accomplished by himself. He needed an army behind him. And so did the main characters in Star Wars. They had a whole army of people supporting them to fight evil and to push forward good.
Right.
And all of that group on Facebook against Matt Lauer caused those other women to say, you know what, I need to speak up too. And that was really one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the show, Tanster, was to illustrate that point, that if people would just speak up rather than saying, oh, I don't want to do that, I'm not a hero, I have to stay in the background, I can't say anything, I'm too scared, I'm too afraid of being sued, I'm too afraid of whatever. I don't know what they're afraid of, quite honestly, because I'm not. But we just need more people to speak up, and that's my message on this radio show today, Peter. Is if we had more people speak up about MLM scams, about NXIVM, about this cult that Tanster was in, just et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we could take back this world to a very large extent away from the evil direction that all of these things represent. So I'm going to get off my SA8 Amway soapbox and let you pursue this, Peter and Tanster. I'll let you guys talk because I talk quite a bit there. Go right ahead. You're speechless.
Oh, I couldn't hear anything.
Yeah,
Hello?
I mean, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
I can't hear Peter, though. Peter, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry, I think I might have muted myself. But yep. Yeah, so I appreciate Tanster doing the things that she did to stick up for Ben, or at least put a spotlight or keep a spotlight on Ben and giving him some support, because I saw some of the mean things that people were writing, and those were just flat out mean. And he's got an interesting story to tell. I hope it's true. there's no real reason for him not to tell the truth, and just kind of puts a light on some of the things that happen. Now, not all MLM related directly, but it's still kind of as interesting, or it's still kind of as related relative to doing the right thing, and how some people can be sucked in, like you were with that other guy in that cult and that cruise, how sometimes people can be sucked in by people that are just fraudsters. So I appreciate your telling those stories, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
You.
They're a little bit on the different side, so usually a different spin.
Oh, really different, really different. Yep. The hero's journey is supernatural, so it's always going to be weird.
Well, that's kind of interesting. So the whole telepathic thing is a little bit hard and fuzzy in my mind. You know, how he pulled that off, only because we didn't get a chance to explore it a little bit further. But the whole concept of you sticking up there and doing the right things and telling the truth. So I appreciate that for sure. And then we're going to make sure that people.
I'm so honored.
I'm going to make sure that people know that they can find a lot of your stuff on thetanster.com. So it's the as in THETANSTER.com. So what motivated you to make it a website? Because you take your cause and you actually put it up on the web, and you're posting some very interesting things. Why did you put it up on the web?
Well, it started with a message I felt I received to put rainbow on the streets, rainbow art on the streets. And then I talked to this lady, and she was like, "Oh, you have to document it." And I was like, "Oh, I never thought of that." I was like, "Oh, I guess I'll do an Instagram." So I'll just say, I'll just show what happened. What happens when you put art on the streets. And we just documented it, and it became a really big hit right away.
So what's rainbow art? So I've never seen rainbow art, or at least I don't think I've seen rainbow art. So what would it look like? Would it be a painting? Would it be like graffiti? Would you paint the side of a building? Would it be something that would be small?
Yard signs, those plastic yard signs?
Sure.
Okay. So I would go get the old plastic yard signs from the end of summer, and I would just pile them up, and I would paint rainbows on them. And sometimes I did silk screens, or sometimes I painted on top of it. But it's going to have, like, the rainbow colors in it. And I will do anything with it. You know what I mean? Like, it's that I play around a lot with, but it just has to have that color sequence. And, I'm very picky about the colors that I use for my rainbows. So I view the rainbow as sort of this, like, energy generator. So wherever there's a rainbow, there's, like, this positive excitement. So all I do is make rainbows because I'm trying to.
You weren't like defacing property, like putting a rainbow.
No, I would maybe a utility pole, just like a yard sign. Just like you put up a little sign at the utility pole.
Right.
Nothing more than that.
Right. Cool stuff.
Oh yeah, nothing nasty at all. I mean, it was all about how do you react to that. Do you like that? Do you hate that? Do you want to stop me? Like, to me, that was the art, too. Wow, somebody wants to stop me now. Like, now we know who that guy is. He wants to stop me. He wants to make sure I can't keep doing this. You know what I'm saying?
Got it.
You see, that's the art project. But this other person wants to help me. But this other person is now jealous. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's this incredible psychological experiment.
And that was how you got started online, and then it expanded from there.
Oh, yes. Yeah, bigger and bigger.
Very nice.
Yeah, certainly if you're a Christian, or even if you're not a Christian, you probably know the original rainbow story, right? It was right after the big flood, and the rainbow came out as a promise of never doing that again, and God's love for the people that made it through the flood. So,
if I may say something about that, my cars are all painted rainbow. So a lot of people do come to me and say, "Oh, when my mother passed, she gave me a rainbow," or it's a very spiritual thing for a lot of people. And I do think there is, like, somehow I feel like God and the rainbow are connected. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's like an abstract representation, sort of the Creator.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely connected in the Bible. There's no doubt about that.
And they, in addition to that, also, it feels very true to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
I feel
on
like,
your web. Oops, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, please, no.
No, on your website, there's an image up on the top left, and my eyes are not very good, but it's an image. It looks like a guy with.
Yeah, it's a Valkyrie. Do you know what that is?
No, what is that?
A Valkyrie is an opera from the 1800s, written by a German composer named Wagner, and it's very famous, like dun 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 dun. That's the Ride of the Valkyries.
Mm-hmm.
So, why is my symbol a Valkyrie? The rainbow does come from Wagner also, because in the Wagner operas, the rainbow was a bridge to heaven, and he actually composed music that was, like, to him, a musical rainbow. So he was very innovative in like, culture about rainbows. And the Valkyrie is what people considered Napoleon's stepdaughter. So, people don't realize that Napoleon was very close with his stepchildren. And a lot of my Napoleon plays and my Napoleon work have been about filling people in on the very intense relationship that Napoleon had with his stepdaughter, Hortense. And he basically made her marry his brother because he couldn't have a child with his wife. So he was trying to have the child through his stepdaughter, through his brother. And the third of their sons actually became Napoleon III. So these are really important people in European history. So I've been just exploring what this relationship means. And the bridge between Napoleon and Napoleon III is his stepdaughter Hortense. So my work is like as much about his stepdaughter Hortense as it is about him. If you start me talking about Napoleon, I will not stop.
Well, I because I was a groupie and I just showed up for my own radio show because Scott said that you were going to be here, I didn't get a chance to do a lot of homework. So as you've been speaking, I've been that's why I muted myself out. I didn't want any background noise. I've kind of gone through your website, and I'm kind of clicking on stuff, and I'm generating more questions that I'd love some more answers to. So, I mean, everything from, like, the yard sign things to it says that Home Depot gave you a massive donation as far as some spray paint or stuff like that so you can do your cool things, and some of the organizations that you kind of tied this around as well. So I think we need to have her back, Scott.
That would be such an honor.
We just kind of scratched the surface. Yep, we just kind of scratched the surface because you're creative in a different way, and I think you can really help a lot of people that are think like you do. So I'd love to maybe figure out. I want to learn more, and then we're going to have you back. So very good
I can't
stuff.
believe it. I feel like I won the jackpot.
Yeah, you're good stuff. Absolutely good stuff.
Thank you.
So Scott, we're going to run out of time, believe it or not. So I'm going to let you wrap it up. And then, Tanster, thank you very much. I promise you'll probably see a whole bunch of visits from me on your website, thetanster.com.
Peter. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm just going to repeat what I said a few minutes ago. You know, this whole thing of the hero's journey and basically exposing Matt Lauer and causing him to lose his career. If people, it's not about Matt Lauer, okay? It's really about people speaking up and other people understanding that if they just spoke up, they have so much more power than they thought they had, particularly today, because I think all three of us are old enough to remember the days before the Internet where you really had no mouthpiece at all. I mean, there was no way you could break through. You know, there was ABC, NBC, and CBS, period, and there was just no way to have any kind of influence. And now you can go to thetanster.com and read tons of stuff. You can go to my website. You can go to Peter's Radio.
Tell you, you know, a lot of what the website is now, it's the best of, like, the truth media. And I scour YouTube to find the best, most educational, most entertaining, and all this stuff is just made out of passion. And, I don't agree with everything everybody says at all, but just my thing is, just listen to them. They tell you why they feel the way they do. It's like a soapbox.
Right.
Just listen to everybody. Just listen to everybody. Just open your mind a little bit.
Yeah, so open your mind and join us is my message. We need an army. We need an army like Napoleon did and like the Star Wars characters did. They couldn't have done that by themselves. So, join us on the journey. Tell your story.
Exactly.
Give your input.
Right.
Give us more.
Exactly. Join us on the journey. Let's do this.
Yeah, give us more visibility so that we can help people, from my perspective, not get scammed by Amway and other MLM scams. From your perspective with the cult that you were in, and any number of things that are not right with this world. That, in my opinion, if more people spoke up, we could fix so many things that are wrong in this world. And I just I'm so happy to have met you, Tanster, and we'll definitely have you back and explore all kinds of things in the future. But that's my call to action. And if you want to give any,
do the hero's journey. If the adventure says, "Hey, you want an adventure? Do it. Do the adventure."
Right, exactly. And Tanster, I'll let you just finish up with anything you wanted to say that you haven't been able to say yet. Go right ahead.
I'm grateful and flattered, and thank you guys. I really, I just like to talk about Napoleon. This is all a huge publicity stunt, so I can talk about Napoleon.
And I
fine.
can sincerely say I haven't thought about Napoleon in a really long time, so I know
I was really a cool guy.
That's cool. Well, we're going to wrap it up because we're running out of time. Thanks, Tanster, for being here. Make sure you check her out, thetanster.com. And then we're on buildingfortunesradio.com. Scott Johnson, thanks for being here. Thanks for bringing a wonderful guest. We're going to catch you guys next week. Thanks,
You've been listening to Building Fortunes Radio on buildingfortunesradio.com. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check us out every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for the designated Building Fortunes Radio segment with Peter Mingils. Be sure to check out the buildingfortunesradio.com website for our featured segments. It's been our privilege to have you listen in. At Building Fortunes Radio, we wish you the success you deserve and are willing to work for. So spread the word, tell a friend, join our newsletter, and go make a difference in your world.